Welcome back to Women with a Call, a magazine talk show which seeks to explore women's issues in ministry and the marketplace. We have a guest with us today who is in the marketplace, who really has captured, I would say, the talents and the giftings, the legacy, that's the word I want to use, the legacy from her family heritage, and it is called culture. I'm going to bring her back with you. This is Esther Vihil, and we are going to be talking about this in more detail. All right?
Yes.
Okay. So you're wearing a garment, and the stitching, is it called stitching?
Yes.
Is it?
It's Spanish. Well, we call it Spanish embroidery, but
Spanish embroidery.
Yes, it is, like I say, one stitch that my ancestors used. And actually, it was to create blankets. When they came to San Juan, they had brought livestock. And part of the livestock that they had was the churro sheep.
Okay.
From the churro sheep, the women took the wool, carded, spun, and created sabanilla, which is a woven wool blanket. They had very small looms, and so they had to make 3 strips and piece them together in order to create a blanket. But this was a must for them. They needed the warmth.
Because of the weather.
Because of the weather, I'm sure they had no idea what, they were going to encounter.
Exactly.
And this, to me, like I say, is a need that they had. So this is what they did. They couldn't get supplies from the Mexico area
Right.
because it took 5 months and it was very hazardous
To reach
reach
Mexico.
that. So whatever they had on hand, they ingeniously were able to use, and they created these blankets. And I'm sure it started since they first came here, and they started, to build homes and make homes for themselves in this land that they would fence in
Yes.
order to get the land
That
grants.
is good. Now, how long would it normally take you to stitch what you're wearing, or can you put it in a time frame? I mean, do you start it and then put it down and come back to it, or do you just complete it at one time?
No, it's really impossible to create it in one time because
Okay.
it is very time consuming. And I use the very thin yarn. My ancestors used a much thicker type of yarn, so it wouldn't take as long. But I use the very thin commercial yarn, which actually gives it a finer look.
Okay, good.
But within 1 square inch, because I have never really taken the time to mark it down. Like I say, I had taken this for granted and never thought about it until I realized that this was labeled a dying art.
Oh, so the art was, we were losing the art.
Yes.
How were you able to recover it?
My mother, who was born in 1895, had become a teacher, and she was very much out in the workforce, which was not a common thing. Most women were home
Oh,
having
yeah.
12 and 14 children.
Okay.
But she was in the workforce. She actually never married until she was 25 years old, which
Was that unusual then?
very unusual.
Right.
Most of the girls were promised to successful landowners to get married at a very, very young age.
How young are we talking about?
16, 15,
Okay.
they were already prepared. You were either a farmer or you were a mother with
All
12
right.
and 14 children at home. That was not unusual. My husband comes from a family of 11.
Okay.
But there were only 4 of us, I guess, because my mother was out in the workforce.
Yeah, she was working.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, she also, in 1928, chartered a group called the Arte Antiguo,
Okay.
which means ancient art. And the purpose of this group was to preserve the culture and the traditions of the Spanish people that were already basically not practiced anymore. This was already in, like I say, the 1900s, so much had happened. The Indian Revolt would destroyed a lot of
Yes.
the Spaniard culture and traditions, and they hadn't come back
Yes.
until 12 years later.
Okay, just one moment. I want our audience to see some of your work. I know you're going to be returning for the next show.
Yes.
All right. But in the meantime, I've shared with them about your blouse.
All right.
All right. But can you tell us a little bit about some of the banners that we have here in the studio today?
Yes, I created inventory.
What do we have here?
Yes. This is a piece that I created. All the designs are my own. And one of the
At your
reasons,
home? Really?
yes, the reason is because of my history. My mother, who was into culture since 1928, was passionate about this. And I thought
Yes.
that all young girls were being taught this. And this is very similar to the colchas, which means the blankets,
Yes.
that were being made at that time by our ancestors. And so she recruited me very young. I must have been maybe 6, 7 years old. She wanted me to copy the few designs because they had gone out to research about colcha, and there was very little. They did find they had about 12 designs, and they were rather crude. I don't know, I know for sure that our ancestors didn't have the time to become artists.
Yes.
This was all a need.
And this is now an art.
Right.
Let me just ask you this. What we've just shown is actually can be a banner in a home or in a religious setting. If somebody wanted to, can your work be purchased, or is it just for you to enjoy?
Well, I have not sold any of my pieces.
Oh, you haven't? All right.
No, and I plan to leave them to my family.
Okay.
Because for me, they're very precious.
Yes.
And it's an heirloom that cannot be duplicated.
Okay.
They're all individual and pieces that are embroidered
Let's
with
look at another
colcha.
one. Let's see if we can
Right.
look at one more before we close today. And this is the one you
is
just...
very similar to what my mother and her group used to do,
Oh, okay.
because that was similar to what the blankets that they created.
Okay, so this is, see, actually, for those who are watching, it's a complete banner that has all kinds of colors in it and designs. And this is actually called colcha. Am I saying that okay?
Yes, colcha.
Embroidery, and Esther Vihil has done an excellent job with this. I think could you have some information in museums too? Maybe when we come back on the next show, you could tell us about that.
All right.
All right. But is there one more? Do we have time for just one more display, please? Let's see, the one behind here, the black with all the pretty flowers. Can we look at that, and she can give us a little bit of information on it. Is that a towel? You embroidered? Is it on a towel?
No.
Oh, what's that material?
I use cotton.
Okay.
Because in the olden days, they used savania. But I
Savania.
do such a close stitch that the savania is not, does not have the heaviness in order to carry this much wool.
I see.
So what I've even done, including in my books, I recommend that they line the cotton. And it's hard to find good cotton anymore that is woven.
We need to talk about that the next time as well.
Right.
So you do have books?
Yes,
Can we get your books?
yes.
All right. So we want you to pay attention to the information that we have on the screen later, how we can contact you to find out about your books. Okay? All right. God bless you. Good to have you with us.
Thanks.
All right.